Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show I read a lot of comic books and I let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with the pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week, The Penguin. Issue number 2 from DC Comics, and I am just as surprised as you are because I haven't really liked a lot of the recent work from writer Tom King. Except for like Human Target. I do like Human Target a lot, but I didn't really like the Wonder Woman. I've actually been kind of down on Tom King here on the channel lately. I did not like the first issue of this one. I thought it was overly verbose. I thought it had unnecessary narration. It had a structure that was decent, but I just didn't get the vibe of there was a reason to have a Penguin series, right? Then I get to issue number 2, and I read it, because you never know what's going to happen with these things. Issue number 2 was awesome. Issue number 2 blew my mind. It didn't really blow my mind, but it blew my mind that I was so freaking impressed with it that by the end of my entire stack of comics, this was the pick of the week. It has use of narration that doesn't feel unimportant and doesn't feel relentlessly verbose. It actually has a great structure and sense of pace about it. It's got really amazing artwork, and it's also involving a character that was first introduced and utilized in Batman Killing Time, which I could not stand. Now, I like the idea of the character The Help. So this entire issue is the Penguin, Oswald, trying to get the help of the help. And it takes an entire issue of convincing, and it really paints Oswald in a very deadly and calculating kind of light. It's very sinister. It really crescendos at just the right moment, and the art just completely nails the effect of what Tom King's trying to build into. I was floored by this issue. I loved it, and out of everything this week, there's some pretty solid books. This one stood far above and beyond, and also Rafael de la Torre did a fantastic job on the artwork. It all worked in unison, in conjunction, and you know what? Maybe Tom King does know something about comics, because he has before, he does kind of now, he definitely does with this issue. Penguin number 2, my pick of the week. 100%. Then we got The Flash number 1, a brand new Flash series from Cy Spurrier, Mike Deodato Jr., and it was alright. It's decent. It's the start of a new story involving Wally West. It's going to have some kind of crazy, like, temporal, multiversal thing going on involving the cosmic energy of the Speed Force and these warps and stuff going on. It takes a long time to kind of set this up, and it sets up a lot emotionally, not just with Wally, but with Linda in particular, so I like the work that Cy Spurrier is doing with those characters, but a lot of these ideas are thrown at you, and it just feels at times a little discombobulating. It's hard to kind of really understand what the point is throughout a lot of it. It comes across as very frantic and random at times, but I do have faith that Spurrier and company have a plan going forward, because a book structured like this has to have a very conscious plan as to where it's going and how it will develop. Unfortunately, the execution will probably leave a lot of people like me just being like, it was alright. I mean, I like a challenging superhero comic book involving all kinds of crazy superheroic stuff, but this one just kind of came across a little bit too clunky and frantic. And the artwork by Mike Deodato Jr., he's using the typical modern layouts that he typically is known for. I said typically way too many that time. Typically, absolutely. He's doing that thing where he's like breaking up the panels, and it makes it look interesting visually. But the line work itself, there's some parts of it that are very much Mike Deodato feeling, but other of those certain like lines just feel a little bit too clean, so it was kind of a mixed bag for me. I thought The Flash issue number 1 was solid, has potential, but we'll see what happens. Then we got Batman Catwoman, the Gotham War Red Hood. This is a first of a 2-issue series, I believe, an auxiliary tie-in to the whole Gotham War. Now, the Gotham War book started with the the one shot that launched everything. I can't remember, opening moves or something like that. And it's going through the pages of Batman and Catwoman, and it will have a closing one shot. Those are all necessary to the story. That is all the main story. This is a secondary story that is not essential to your understanding of what is going on in the main narrative of the Gotham War. In fact, it actually does come across a little disjointed and confusing because it doesn't quite reflect everything that's happened. Then again, I've read the next issue of Batman. I don't know if it fits in. It doesn't feel like it fits in necessarily 100%, but it is a focus in on Jason Todd. It's written by Matthew Rosenberg. It's not written bad or anything, and there's a line in here that really had me cracking up. Like, I laughed out loud. There's a really cool bit. But aside from that, it didn't do anything to warrant this being needed as a part of this story, right? So basically, if you're a hardcore Jason Todd Red Hood fan, you want to check this out. But if you're trying to already avoid buying too many tie-ins to an event or something, you might want to skip on that one. Then we got Detective Comics here with issue 1074. Ram V is back on the title. The whole interruption of Night Terrors is over. These books can get back to what they were doing, and Ram V does it excellently. When we last saw Batman in this story, he was basically possessed by some kind of demon or something like that, and this issue is him going to different spots in the city trying to reclaim what humanity he still has inside of him. And this book has been big, sweeping, tragic, romantic, and operatic, and this is like the Dark Knight of the Soul moment right here. It is absolutely fantastic. Dustin Nguyen coming in on the artwork, kind of aesthetically a bit different than we're typically getting in the pages of Detective Comics, but it works for me. The backup story is about the Ten-Eyed Man, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Hayden Sherman, and that slapped. In fact, if that was a full single issue comic, this definitely would have been the pick of the week. If this One-Eyed Man was like a full-on comic in and of itself, the layouts, the story, the lettering, everything about that backup is awesome. And I know a lot of us skip the backups, but don't skip them in Detective Comics because they rock. Then we've got Action Comics 1057. Once again, getting back on track post-Night Terrors. Philip Kennedy Johnson's been doing a great job with this book that is a bit Superman family-centric, but also very action-oriented, and I love it. It starts off with a little bit of a cheesy moment with Superman having lunch with like an ex-con that he saved or caught one time or something like that. So it has, but, you know, Superman needs to have some of those cheesy moments kind of baked into it, right? But then it gets into some big, cool action sequences, great art from Rafa Sandoval, and a really interesting and intense news interview between Clark Kent and the leader of this, like, domestic terrorist group. That was cool. Then you got the Lee Weeks, Dan Jurgens, Lois and Clark story. That was cool. And then you got a nice little story in the back about Connor and Martian Manhunter's, like, niece, whatever. What's her name? I don't remember her name right now. Martian Girl or something like that. Anyway, I really like this book, and I think I'm warming up to the anthology kind of idea of this book, but I do wish it was still just that main story, because that is basically why people are reading this book, and it is the start of a new story. Then we got Green Arrow issue number 4, big confrontation between Oliver Queen and Hal Jordan, but Hal Jordan is Parallax. How can that be? Well, you have to read the book to find out, but one thing I love about what Josh Williamson's doing with the pages of Green Arrow right now is building up the legacy of Green Arrow and the family, and how that ties into all of the history of the DCU and these characters and their interconnectedness. In this one, we're really getting a nice deep dive back into the history of the relationship between Hal Jordan and Oliver Queen. And it's referencing a lot of stuff obviously I was there for, so it tinges this like nostalgic bubble in me. But if you're not familiar with some of these events, this will catch you up on what's going on there. But it's also setting up a very interesting approach to a Green Arrow story, which is a little bit more about like time travel and just kind of weird stuff, and the way it's looping around itself. It's got a cool kind of structure to the narrative, so I really like it. Art's pretty solid. Green Arrow has been solid, so there you go. Then we got the Unstoppable Doom Patrol with issue number 6. This is the penultimate issue of Doom Patrol for now. I would love to see this continue, because Dennis Culver and Chris Burnham understand what makes Doom Patrol work. It's not just an X-Men ripoff. By the way, the X-Men are the ripoff of Doom Patrol, but it's the weird, quirky, out there comic book about outcasts and outsiders. I know it sounds like I'm describing X-Men, but I'm talking weird and wild and cool and fun and eccentric, and that's what's going on, and esoteric, and that's what's going on in the pages. This is a great successor to the work of Grant Morrison, Rachel Pollack, Gerard Way, and now continuing with Dennis Culver. I absolutely love this run. Everything explodes in this issue, and it has an ending that's going to have a lot of longtime Doom Patrol fans really excited. I'm excited, but also kind of disappointed. There's only one more issue of this left. Come on, DC, you got a hit on your hands. Let's continue that momentum. Let's jump over to Marvel, where we have Ultimate Invasion issue number 4. This is the final issue of the series that is set to reignite a new vision of the Ultimate Universe by Jonathan Hickman and Brian Hitch. And it's all right. It's good. Like, I like this world that is set up. It has some interesting possibilities. We've already gotten the announcement that there's an Ultimate Spider-Man book on the way from Jonathan Hickman and I think Marco Cicchetto, so that's going to be freaking cool. But this is a completely different interpretation of the Ultimate Universe, and the book itself is just okay. The exciting part is this world and the idea that Hickman is going to, along with other creators, get to play in this new Marvel universe that he's created. But the way to get there, I mean, it was all right, but it kind of just felt all over the place, a little bit rushed, and it never really felt like you knew what it was setting up for. And then it just has an ending that's just kind of like, okay. And then I was like, oh, I thought there was going to be another big oomph going on there. But in fact, it's just kind of like, it's like one of those. Does that make sense? Anyway, $8.99, giant page count. It's all right, it's solid, but it didn't woo me like a lot of other Jonathan Hickman books. Then we got the Immortal Thor issue number 2. I thought issue number 1 was okay. I wasn't quite sold on it. I'm not really always quite sold on Al Ewing's art. I mean, not artwork, but his stories, his writing. I like his concepts, but I feel like the execution sometimes doesn't work for me, and it really doesn't work for here. I am all for bringing back thought balloons, especially when they're necessary, right? But most of this entire issue is Thor just thinking to himself. Straight up just thinking to himself. And maybe it would be different if there were blocks around those words instead of thought balloons. I don't know, but it came across as like not being what I need, especially if you're trying to launch a new Thor book. Thor is a book that's supposed to be about thunder, lightning, brute strength and force, and like ancient mythological stuff. And yes, wisdom and introspection and stuff like that, but it needs to be big. It needs to have this bombastic quality to it. And this doesn't. There are things that are happening that should be big and bombastic, but when Thor's just sitting around just thinking to himself the whole time in like soliloquy type manner, it just kind of throws off the pace, throws off the energy for me, and it doesn't really work. So the art's okay, but the story just, it's the execution of it, and it's setting something up at the end that I think is supposed to be a big deal, but it didn't quite feel as big of a deal as I think Al Ewing wanted me to feel. I don't know. What do you think about Immortal Thor? Let us know down below. Then we got Moon Knight, City of the Dead, issue number 3, written by David Pepose. This is a pretty solid story. Moon Knight's trying to save some kids' souls down in the underworld. He's trapped there. He's come across the, what's her name? The Crimson Scarab. Is that her name? I always get her name wrong. I probably got it right that time, though. What is it? What's her name? Yes, Scarlet Scarab. See, I totally got it wrong. Anyway, art's okay in this one, but the story's fine. It's continuing the momentum of what was being set up in issue number 1 and then continued through 2. So it's got a nice throw line. It's playing with Moon Knight's mythology, and it's playing with like the legacy of the character and bringing back some former villains, and it's got an interesting kind of vibe to it. So I like it still. I think it's a very solid comic book. Then we've got Blade number 3. Blade is one of my favorite characters. I have said about this book, I like the line work, I love the story, I love the direction and the characterization that Brian Edward Hill is bringing to Blade, and I like the artwork by Casagrande. But it's been the coloring. It's been Jordi Belair, but the coloring just come across as very muddy, and it just feels flat, and it doesn't really feel very clear or vibrant or just whatever. There's a different colorist on issue number 3, and it totally works. It's not 100% perfect. There's still too much utilization in certain moments of the same color on pages. But for the most part, it's actually popping. I can clearly see foreground, background, midground, all that kind of stuff. All the characters are separate and distinct. It helps elevate this book a little bit, and I really freaking liked it. And I've been saying for 2 issues, the only bad thing about this book has been the coloring, and the coloring has shifted and changed, and the book has gotten a lot better because of it. I absolutely love this book now, and I hope that this version of this Blade book lasts for a while. Hill is a perfect writer for this. I like the artwork, and now I like the coloring. So there you go. Then we got Miss Marvel, the New Mutant, issue number 2. I don't remember being overly impressed with issue number 1, but I decided I'd come in and check out issue number 2, and I was not impressed with issue number 2. It just kind of feels all over the place. It doesn't really feel like it has a nice central line of bringing my interest into the book and containing or continuing to drive that interest all the way through, if that makes sense. Miss Marvel's now firmly in the world of mutants. She's in college. She's trying to do this kind of game. Orcus is hunting her down. They got all this kind of stuff going on. It's interesting enough. And I am a fan of Kamala Khan, but nothing about this is really pulling me in, and it's just not something that's vibing with me. So probably my last issue of Miss Marvel. Then we got Marvel Unleashed issue number 2, written by Kyle Starks. I was blown away by the first issue. This is a book about the pets of the Avengers. Seriously, like Red Wing, Falcon, right? You got Lockjaw in here. You got a D-Dog, which is like D-Man's dog or something. It's a dog wearing a D-Man mask. It's absolutely fantastic. It's really cool, actually. You got Chewie, Captain Marvel's not Cat, but I can't remember what it's called. It's a something with the tentacles or whatever. Anyway, it's about, and Throg's in this issue too. So it's about some dog's owner goes missing. It's an AIM person who's gone to help resurrect Blackheart. So Blackheart is back, and that's cool, especially if you're like me. You mostly know Blackheart from the 90s, from the video games, and from the Ghost Rider comics and stuff. And so now this team of animals, it's up to them to save the world from Blackheart. And it sounds stupid, and it kind of is, but the book knows what it is, and it's humorous, and it's got heart and charm to it. So it's issue 2 I liked just as much as issue 1. And you got Throg in here, and he has a fight with Blackheart that is absolutely freaking fantastic. I like the artwork, I like the story, I like these characters. I really like that book. The Avengers is here with issue number 5. I thought I was done after the last issue. Apparently I forgot, because I came back to read issue number 5, and I just still don't like it. Jed MacKay's a really solid writer, doing great work on Moon Knight, doing good work on Doctor Strange, but Avengers, just not quite working for me. This feels like Hickman light. It feels like, remember when the Black Order came in, not just in the movies, but in the original comics, Infinity, when that stuff started, the Black Order shows up, it's like, whoa, new characters, but they feel like a big deal, and this still feels like a big threat. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The same thing's pretty much going on, but not near as good. It's like Hickman light, and not in a good way for me. Also, though, finally from Marvel, check this out, y'all. We got a facsimile version of Micronauts number 1, foil edition. I've been trying to hunt down at least the first 10 or so issues of Micronauts, the Michael Golden stuff. Tom Scioli's been doing videos on them. I want to get them. I want to read them. I know there's going to be some collections coming soon, but I don't really necessarily like the new coloring on it. Oh, that's cool. Soft and sugar-free bubblegum ad. I don't really like the coloring on it, but I do like seeing the artwork there. So for now, this is my copy of Micronauts number 1, and it's foil, so I think that's cool. Let's jump over to Image. And from Image, we have Void Rivals, issue number 4, from Robert Kirkman, Lorenzo De Felici, and of course part of the Energon universe that's being connected together. Transformers, G.I. Joe, all spinning out of Void Rivals. Void Rivals, of course, being its own story about these two alien soldiers from 2 warring alien races. Turns out that they think that they're so different from each other, but that's actually a big conspiracy or something, right? Because they find out that they are like the same type of people, just slightly different, and they work together to get off this planet. Meanwhile, Transformers just randomly show up. There's another Transformer appearance in here. It does kind of feel just like out of nowhere and for no reason, but I'm sure it's leading to something. You know, we got Transformers next week. Transformers number 1. I've read it. That book is freaking awesome, y'all. But I'm really liking Void Rivals, and Kirkman's taking this as more than just like... So this is a book that could just be hype just because of the Transformers connection. But it's actually developing its own story, developing its own world within the overall world of the Energon universe, which will involve the G.I. Joes and the Transformers. But Void Rivals is distinctly kind of its own story, its own creatures, its own characters, and it does utilize different elements from Transformers so far, but right now it's just working for me, and it's really defining and separating itself as its own thing. And I think Kirkman's doing a really good job with it. When I was reading it this time, I was kind of like in my head imagining it like a TV cartoon series from the 80s, and the dialogue was kind of fitting right with that, and I could hear those voices, and well, that's a good page. Anyway, Void Rivals number 4. I'm continuing to enjoy it. I love the artwork. I love the story. And I love that Kirkman, even with all the hoopla surrounding the launch of Transformers and how this is all connected to it, that's not the most important thing about this book. This book is actually really cool. It's a cool story about society. It's a cool story about war. And it's a cool story about brotherly love. Anyway, also from Kirkman, we got Firep Power here with issue number 27. This book is nearing its end, and it's probably time and appropriate for it. I've thought this book was near its end before, but now we know definitively it's going to be ending in like 2, 3, 4 issues, something like that. But the heroes are at their lowest point, and they're kind of like regrouping right now, and everybody's discovering these new abilities, and everybody's training and working on it. So not a lot happens here. They just kind of play around with some stuff and just elevate certain things that have already been set into motion. But I'm really enjoying Firep Power. I love the artwork. Chris Samney, Matt Wilson, the colorists, working together to produce a really kinetic, powerful comic book with beautiful, vibrant colors, great color choices, amazing line work that feels like you have all of the weighty moments have that weight, and all the actiony moments have that action, and it freaking works. It's explosive, but it's also soft and subtle. I really like it. Firep Power, one of the best books on shelves. New Burn is here with issue number 11, I think. Yes, issue number 11 of New Burn, Chip Zdarsky, Jacob Phillips' book. I like this book. It took a big, long hiatus. I read the last issue. I was worried I was going to be disconnected from it. I was, and then it pulled itself back together. Same thing here. I'm reading this book. I'm like, I don't remember anything about these characters or what's going on. I know New Burn, I know the lady, but like, I don't remember any of the details about what's going on. By the end of the issue, I was refreshed, but most of the issue, I was rather confused. So I don't know if it's time for me to jump off of New Burn. I really like it, but when it's not maintaining or retaining, I should say, in my head, and it doesn't produce a level of excitement, sometimes I think I just need to dip out for a moment, maybe reread a trade paperback or get caught back up on the title or something like that. From Dark Horse, we got the new Usagi Yojimbo book. This is Usagi Yojimbo, Ice and Snow, issue number 1, the legacy numbering here of 270, the continuing journey of Usagi Yojimbo by Stan Sakai. He's been doing this for 40 years. It's back at Dark Horse. It was at Dark Horse for a very, very long time. Usagi is amazing, and it's been going on for so long, and I know that can be intimidating, but honestly, any new number 1 is a great place to jump into Usagi Yojimbo, because it's just a lifelong journey of a samurai rabbit or a Ronin rabbit. That's what it is, right? I love this book. I love the texture that Stan Sakai brings, not just in his line work with his backgrounds and the foregrounds and the characters, but also with the lettering. He is one of the best letterers out there. There's really interesting stuff. Even if you know nothing about Usagi Yojimbo, you can just jump right in. Think about it like TV shows used to be back in the day. We didn't have DVD or Blu-ray sets. We didn't have streaming. We just jumped into a TV show, and just if we liked it, we just kept watching it. Eventually, we'd get everything filled in. So, that being said, Usagi Yojimbo, Ice and Snow number 1, magnificent work from a magnificent creator. The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos, issue number 4 is here. This is a book that continuously surprises me as how much I am into it. I remember reading the first issue and thinking that it had a cool idea, but I didn't really quite get the vibe and direction and identity of this book, and the book really starts establishing that in issue 2, then in 3, and now in 4. It's basically like the Universal monsters, but like a younger version of them. Christopher Chaos is like a mad scientist. You have a Frankenstein monster character in here. You have a vampire. There was a werewolf. He's murdered. They're trying to investigate the murder of their friend who was a werewolf. There's a woman, I think she's a witch. So there's all this kind of stuff going on. The coloring in it is absolutely freaking vibrant. It is beautiful. The emotions of the story are very real. The mystery is intriguing. The use of these character archetypes is absolutely fantastic to me. So this book continues to deliver, continues to impress me. Of course, it's by James Tynan and Tate Bromball with artwork by Isaac Goodhart. Miguel Muerto on the coloring. Really fantastic book right there. All right, from Boom Studios, we have Stuff of Nightmares, Red Murder. This is a one-shot comic book written by R.L. Stine. There was a previous Stuff of Nightmares miniseries that I just didn't vibe with, and I dropped out of it after a couple issues. But now we're in the Halloween season. This book's coming back as a series of one-shots, I believe. There's going to be a Christmas one coming up, too. This isn't Halloween themed, but it's really cool, actually. I liked this one a lot. It's got artwork by Adam Gorham. It's violent, it's brutal, it's bloody. It's kind of like vibing with, like, it's basically a slasher character that was created for comics, right? It became a big movie star or whatever. But the artist who created this character never saw any of those billions of dollars, right? And it's about him dealing with the fame and success of this Red Murder character. And then the Red Murder character seemingly comes to life and starts like killing people. And it's really interesting. It's kind of like a Tales from the Crypt type thing, one and done, anthology book, written by R.L. Stine from Goosebumps. Fear Street, in particular, was my jam. So, Stuff of Nightmares, Red Murder. It is a $8 one-shot, but it's got a great cover by Francisco Francavilla. It's not the cover of the week, though. That's coming up shortly. Then also here from IDW, we have Godzilla War for Humanity issue number 2. Issue number 1 blew me away last month. It was my pick of the week, one of my favorite comic books of the month, and it is one of my favorite comic books of this week. It almost gave it pick of the week, but Penguin took the cake on that one. But this one is written by Andrew McLean, who is the writer-artist of Headlopper, but the art here is done by Jake Smith, and the art is absolutely amazing. A lot of people that I sold this book to at the shop, issue number 1, I almost tripled our Godzilla sales from a typical Godzilla book on this book just by showing people this artwork, and most of what I heard back from people was that they really dug it. It's got a cool story. It's about this woman who's trying to convince scientists that Godzilla can be used to help protect humanity, but this one is about a new monster as well who's like attacking all the other kaiju, and she's trying to get Godzilla to help, but he's on an island with Mania or whatever that little goofy tiny Godzilla thing's name is. Really great artwork, vibrant coloring, insane stuff, really cool concepts and ideas, and just a super fun book. If you liked issue number 1, you're gonna love issue number 2. No reason why you're not gonna. Then we got Conan the Barbarian here with issue number 3. Man, Titan's been slaying it here on Conan the Barbarian. We got Jim Zub writing it. We got, I think it's Roberto, let's see, yeah, Rob De La Torre on the art, and it looks straight up like John Buscema. But I don't mean that in a very bad way. But when I read this, it makes me feel like I'm reading Savage Sword of Conan, that old magazine from Marvel. I used to sneak into my stepdad's closet, grab them out, and read them. And it feels like that, yo. It's got like the haunting stuff. It's got the spooky stuff. It's got the swords and sorcery and all that kind of stuff. It's just, you know, I'm not always the biggest fan of Conan. And I try to get into Conan books, and I usually drop out of them pretty quickly. But this one has got me enthralled because it feels so old school, and it makes me feel like a kid reaching into my dad's closet, reading me some gnarly, violent, sexy, and spooky Conan books. So Conan the Barbarian number 3, absolutely freaking loved it. Rumpus Room is a new one from AWA Comics, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Ramon Rosanas. This was an interesting book, like a lot of Mark Russell books. It's about a rich guy who's not a good guy. So it's about a rich guy who's not a good guy. This woman shows up to his house, says, hey, my sister used to work for you. She's been missing for 3 weeks. I need you to help me figure out what's going on. Then turns out this dude's got some crazy stuff going on. I don't know how much I want to spoil of it, but if you like Mark Russell, you're going to like this book. A lot of Mark Russell books sometimes can feel overloaded with some of its satirical elements and its commentary. This one, it's there, but it actually has a lighter kind of feel to it. It's very comical, it's pretty fun, and it's got a nice brisk pace to it, which a lot of Mark Russell books don't necessarily have, in my opinion. But Rumpus Room number 1, I really like. So we can put this in a nutshell. It's about a rich dude who's not a good dude who keeps people in his basement. And it's called the Rumpus Room. Let's just say that. Sainted Love is a new one from Vault Comics, issue number 1 right here, written by Steve Orlando with artwork by Giopota or something like this. This was a really interesting book. Now, this book is about 2 men who were lovers back in the early 1900s. One is a boxer, one is a brilliant scientist who invents time travel. So they have to escape the police who are trying to arrest them because it wasn't cool to be gay back then, according to society, right? And so they escape being arrested for just being in love through a time portal and wind up in the 50s, and then of course dealing with all that kind of stuff. So what's happening here is through the trope of time travel, Steve Orlando is telling the story about the gay community in America through the decades, and we're definitely going to be exploring more territory than just the early 1900s and the 50s, but I liked it. It's got some really saucy scenes in it. The artwork doesn't always work for me, but it has a nice, vibrant kind of sense to it. It's kind of bouncy with its pacing, and so I liked it. I enjoyed it, but trust me, this book is gay AF, and I'm all here for it, but be warned, this book has got it all. And so there you go. Then we got By the Horns, Dark Earth, issue number 12. This is the final issue of this story, Dark Earth. This book will be returning, though, and I could not be more excited. As this second series was developing, I was a little bit worried as we got closer and closer to this issue 12, which is actually issue 20 of By the Horns, the longest running series at Scout Comics history, I believe. But By the Horns, Dark Earth, as we were getting closer to this conclusion, I was like, how are they going to wrap all of this up? How is it going to, like, bring itself to a bow? Well, it does. It's a very satisfying conclusion to this phase of the story, because what's even more exciting is that it sets up some really cool stuff to come in what will be, like, I guess the fourth volume in trade paperback, but like the third book, however you want to call it. But the next series, when this book continues on at issue 21, it's going to be even bigger than it's ever been. I love this book. I love the character designs. I love the world building. I love the characters themselves, the writing, the artwork, the coloring, everything about this. It's just super top-notch, and this has been one of the greatest self-made independent comics out there. By the Horns, Dark Earth, that's how you do fantasy and keep me intrigued. All right, then we've got Elvira in Monsterland, issue number 5. This is the final issue of Elvira in Monsterland. Elvira versus Vlad the Impaler, who's gone with so in the previous series, Elvira in Horrorland, she had this, like, enchanted remote control from Fellini, right? And she could go into the movies, the multiverse of movies, right? She was coming up against all these, like, monsters, like Freddy Krueger, or a type of Freddy Krueger, a type of Leatherface, this kind of stuff, right? So this kind of picks up after that, and it's Vlad the Impaler going through the movie multiverse, picking up different versions of Dracula, different versions of werewolves in cinema. So it's nice little, like, references to horror history and horror cinema, and this is just a big final conclusion to it, and it wraps it all up, and it also promises a return to the world of Elvira, and I'm really excited about the next book. But this was a satisfying conclusion. This is not a book that takes itself too seriously. David Avallone does a great job of being, like, tongue-in-cheek and just kind of having a nice sense of vibrant fun about this book, and that's what Elvira represents to me, is horror and vibrant fun. So there you go. Also, cover of the week. I don't care if you don't think it counts because it's a photo of Elvira from years ago, but it's Elvira with a chainsaw with the jack-o'-lantern. That's the cover of the week right there. From Floating World Comics, we have Night Cruising. This is a one-shot comic book that was pretty interesting and weird. So it's about this dude. It's a black and white, like, self-made comic book. This is going to give you that vibe of, like, those rando comics from, like, the 80s or the early 90s where it's just edgy for edge's sake, but the art's interesting. It's black and white, slightly amateurish, but it's using things like screen tone and it's providing a certain kind of texture. So I like the art. I like the flow. The story's very weird. It's about this dude who drops off his date. She's like, don't get into any more trouble. Don't get into any trouble tonight. He's like, you know I won't. And he does nothing but get into trouble. And this story just keeps twisting and turning a little bit here and there. Just gets darker and darker. So I liked it. I didn't think it was like the super most wowie indie of the week or like anything like that, but I liked the aesthetic. I liked the vibe, and I liked the boldness of this book. But it's not like super in your face, but it's got some interesting and disturbing elements to it that I really did like, and it's a nice package put together too. So yeah, Night Cruising from Floating World Comics. That's pretty cool. Then we got Second Coming Trinity, issue number 6. This is the final issue of the third series of Second Coming. More to come, because the ending of this one Whoa, I'm loving this book. Mark Russell's doing a great job of taking a story that sounds like it should just be a one-note story. Oh, God sends Jesus back to Earth to learn from a Superman-type character how to be a better sun god or messiah or sacrificial icon or something like that, right? And the book has so much heart. It has so much reality and honesty and truth in it, right? And it also has these crazy, quirky bits. And in this one, we're dealing with the idea that Sunman, I think it's Sunman or Sunstar. Anyway, the Superman villain here, he's got a son now, and the sun is like let loose on the city and it's destroying everything. And he has to make a tough decision. And it actually kind of hits, and it hits hard, and it's really cool. And also, that's the smell of the week. But this book has been awesome. I've been loving it. There's a little super baby right there. But the smell of the week as well. Second Coming Trinity. More to come. All right, trade paperback wise, I got one I want to highlight this week. It's Miracle Man, the complete, original, epic, for the first time, I think, complete in one package as a softcover. They did do an omnibus, but I like these soft covers a lot better. They're easier to handle. Now, I don't always like some of the remastering that they have done on this book, and I don't always like some of the things that they have kind of censored in this book, just slight little things or whatever. However, this is the cheapest way to get this series, and it's not hard to piece together the Eclipse run. I have most of it pieced together. It's just that one damn issue. What is it, like 15 or something? I saw it at the Memphis Expo this week. It was like $180 at this one booth, and I'm like, I'm not going to pay that. So for $50, you can get this. $50 for one trade. I know it seems like a lot, but considering that this is the first time all of it has, the Alan Moore stuff, all of it has been in one book together in a soft cover form, I think it's worth it. I think it's cool, and I just wanted to let y'all know that that was out this week. So to recap, Second Coming Trinity, a great ending, has heart, setting up something to come. Night Cruising, definitely indie, definitely weird, definitely trying to do something different, but interesting. Elvira in Monsterland, number 5, a great conclusion of this series and cover of the week. By the Horns, Dark Earth, a great conclusion of this series and an excellent setup for what's to come. Sainted Love, number 1, a gay romp through time, and I am all here for it. Rumpus Room, number 1, I like it. It's got that Mark Russell vibe, but with a more brisk pace and a little bit more on-the-nose humor. Conan the Barbarian, issue number 3. This is so old school, it hurts, and it's great. Godzilla War for Humanity, number 2, continues to impress in just as much as the first issue. Stuff of Nightmares, Red Murder, a one-shot horror comic book by R.L. Stine that will hit you right in your preteen feels. The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos, issue number 4, continues to separate itself amongst the pack. Usagi Yojimbo is back with Ice and Snow, issue number 1, a great introduction to this world. You can jump right in there. New Burn, number 11, starting to lose me a little bit. Maybe it's the big hiatus between the last two arcs. Firep Power, issue number 27, slow, but still doing that build-up to the grand finale, and I'm digging it. Void Rivals, number 4, distinguishing itself apart from the rest of the Energon universe by not just being the springboard for the new Transformers book, but actually being a compelling story with interesting and intriguing characters and plot points in and of itself. Micronauts, Facsimile, number 1 reprint, foil, shiny, cool. Avengers, number 5, the last one I'm going to read. Marvel Unleashed, number 2. Loved it. Cute, charming, and hilarious. Really had a lot of fun with that. Miss Marvel, the New Mutant, number 2. Just not for me. Blade, number 3. They got a different colorist. The coloring's better. The book excels. It's great. It's great. Did somebody listen? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I mean it. Like, I'm a Blade fan. Marvel? Thank you. All right, Moon Knight, City of the Dead, issue number 3, continuing to do what this series has been doing, which is just be a dope comic. Then we got the Immortal Thor, issue number 2, really kind of dragged me down. Didn't have a good pace, didn't really vibe with it. We'll see what happens in the next couple issues. Ultimate Invasion number 4, I like the setup and the promise and the potential of Hickman getting to create his brand new Marvel Universe, but the road to get there was just kind of okay. The Unstoppable Doom Patrol, issue number 6, weird, wild, wonky fun, and a big, explosive setup to a grandiose finale, I hope. Green Arrow number 4, a really cool exploration of the history of the relationship between Hal and Oliver. That's cool. Action Comics, really great kickoff to a new story arc and some decent backups there as well. Then we got Detective Comics. Wow. Best backup I have ever read, man. That was freaking awesome. And the actual story is great, too. Batman, Catwoman, the Gotham War, Red Hood, not essential to your understanding, but if you're a hardcore Red Hood fan, you might want to check it out. Flash #1 had a lot of cool concepts, some decent artwork, but it just didn't quite pull it together in a compelling enough issue #1 for me. I'm curious to know what you think about Flash #1 in the comments down below. But the pick of the week goes to Tom King, Rafael Del Torre, and DC with The Penguin, issue #2. Brutal, bloody, and exciting, and well-structured and paced. And just the pacing and the structure and the way that works with the artwork alone makes it the pick of the week. So that's what I read, that's what I dug, that's what I thought. What are you reading? What are you digging? What are you thinking? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support this channel. I've been rocking Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading. Station. Pop, pop. Boom!